So it's good to be with y'all. We had a great weekend, and we'll talk about that seminar this past weekend, 2-day immersion in Atlanta. And we'll talk about some of the things we learned. Let me start in with a question here from somebody who's participating, and then we'll get to some of the things that we learned from that. Maria asks, what could the primary commitment look like for a single person to God, Jesus, career, children? Sometimes I talk about making in the marriage book, what I call the primary commitment. In other words, very difficult for a marriage to succeed unless the partners are willing to make the primary commitment to first be committed to your partner. If you're not committed to your partner first, then everything else is going to intrude. If you don't make the first decision, the first commitment to your partner, and you make it one time, you make it first and make that primary decision, then every little thing that comes along is going to confuse and irritate you. So then when something from work comes along, then you'll be constantly going, oh gosh, what do I do here? And work will tend to win out and your partner will lose. Then something from the children comes along and then your partner will lose. Then your mother calls and says, well, she wants something and your partner will lose. And so many things will come along and intervene between you and your partner until eventually your partner is just wedged out, and then at some point you wonder, what happened to our marriage? So you make the decision, the first decision first, which is my partner going to become first? Going to be the first, the most important relationship in my life? If you make that, then you make sure at every decision you ask yourself. Now that doesn't mean that your partner, that you don't do anything with anybody but your partner. That doesn't mean that. But it means that you see to it that nothing you do interferes with the relationship with your partner. It's not like I don't go anywhere but home. It's not like Donna and I are pinned together. But I make sure that nothing that I do interferes with my relationship with her. So, for example, if somebody calls, well, for example, today, somebody said, would you be willing to, a minister said to me, would you be willing to substitute, a good friend, would you be willing to substitute for me in 3 weeks? I'm exhausted, I'm worn out, I'm not feeling well. Would you be willing to substitute for me? I'm taking off on vacation, really kind of like almost on an emergency vacation. Would you be willing to substitute for me in the pulpit and speak for me? The tendency would be, because this is a good friend, to say, well, sure, I'll do that. I don't ever do that. Not with a good friend, not with my kids, not anybody. I said, my inclination would be, sure, probably, but let me talk to Donna first and see what she has planned. Because I don't make plans without talking to her. Because there isn't an I, it's we do things. My primary decision, my primary relationship is with her. Sometimes when I go, and some people would be inclined to think, well, so you can't make decisions on your own? No, not really, because it's a we, and it's something that I voluntarily choose to do. Now, if I felt obligated to do it, if it was like, I'm afraid to make decisions because I'd feel guilty, or she might be mad at me, see, well, then that would be a codependent relationship. Then I'd be a hostage. That wouldn't be a healthy thing. No, I choose to live in a healthy relationship that is accentuated, that is multiplied, that is exponentially stronger, where I'm stronger because I live with a partner where we mutually support each other. I choose not to do things solo because I'm a stronger, happier person as a result. See the difference? It's huge. That's what's meant by the primary decision. Does that apply only to marriages? No, it doesn't. So you could do the same thing in a relationship with God. And before we get to that, for a single person, a couple can do the same thing in their relationship with God. So out of all the people on the planet, my primary relationship with this is with my wife. But two people can then, in turn, a couple can choose to then make their primary decision with God. So that before they do anything with anybody else, their primary decision is with God. See this? So Donna and I could, for example, choose to make our primary decision with God. Our first relationship will be with God, then with everyone else. See? So you can actually have two primary decisions or two primary relationships, and they're not contradictory. So that's an example of a couple of ways to look at a primary relationship. For a single person, then you wouldn't have a primary relationship with a spouse, but you could have simply a primary relationship with God. My first question is, how does this affect my relationship with God and then with everybody else? Then it becomes kind of a building blocks or stepping stones or priorities, a priority list. First is maybe God in my life. And this is up to you. I'm not going to make a list for you. Then comes, let's say I'm not married. Then would come my children. What if I don't have children? Then say first is God. Then it might be my aging parents. Maybe I've never been married and don't have children. Maybe I don't have aging parents. Maybe then it would be my career. I may not have a family at all. It might be my allegiance to my nonprofit organization that's become my second family. You have to decide what your primary decision is going to be. And then stick with that, or it makes you nuts having constantly shifting allegiances. And, oh, what am I going to do? I feel torn. And at different points in your life, you may decide to shift what your primary decision is. You may decide, for example, if you are not healthy, your primary decision might be you. If, for example, I'm talking to somebody who is unhappy, miserable, and they've spent their whole life being a people pleaser and codependent and trying to make everybody else happy and earn their conditional approval, and I'll sometimes grab them by the face and say, quit putting everybody on the planet before you. Drop everybody. Drop your career, drop your education, quit your job, and I've done this many times. Quit talking to your parents on the phone, quit speaking to your brothers, your sisters, quit associating with anybody who puts any pressure on you in your life, and make your total focus getting unconditionally loved and healthy yourself. So in that case, the total focus would be you. Now, it can't stay like that for very long because people can't stay in getting loved forever. At some point, the only way to become healthy and happy is at some point when you get to a certain point of loved, not 100%, then the only way to become healthy is to then turn around and give it to other people. But that, I hope, at least somewhat answers your question. Bill was mentioning sharing the interaction that he had with his sister. You're going to have to email me that. Let's see. Oh, no. I have it in my head. Yeah, that's okay. I've got it. And we'll get to that. Hang on, and we will get to that. And remind me of that. Donna, you might, as we have more time, highlight what Bill said and send it to me again. I just want to be sure I get to the ones that were sent to me beforehand first. And Bill, be ready to modify what I say in case I don't get the details right. Here's somebody who said, I had a call from a CPA. This is kind of more of a business question. After providing him the data to calculate cost basis on a difficult investment. And the CPA started attacking me. He said, you didn't supply me the right data. I can't believe you didn't calculate this for us. Every other financial planner does. You don't know what you're doing. I'm going to have to charge our mutual client $150 an hour to do your work for him. And then the person writing me goes on and says, I didn't know this man from Adam, the CPA. I didn't know what to say. I didn't see it coming. Normally, when I'm prepared and I know I'm about to get it, in other words, attacked, I can do better. I started to defend myself, telling him that we're not authorized to make these calculations that he was attacking me about because we're not tax professionals. Then he started to yell. Would it have been all right to say, Fred, whatever the guy's name was, what do you want from me? Or I'm feeling attacked by you. I know I should have said something to have been wrong, but I don't have anything invested in this guy. I don't care. So I didn't really want to waste one of my concessionary moves or conceding moves on him, but I guess it would have been good practice. My Irish temper welled up in me and I just couldn't do it. I know he was empty, but I really didn't care. So, should I have? It's always good practice to practice being loving with another person. Notice that what this person said was, I didn't want to waste one of my conceding moves, one of my being wrong moves on him. It is never a waste of time to be wrong with somebody, because the practicing being wrong is a sign of who we are. It's a symptom. It's a willingness it's a willingness to be humble. So, gosh, we should never, if we want to be happy, tire of that. So my recommendation is the first move is to never lash back with getting and protecting behaviors of our own. So never defend. So when somebody is attacking you and it comes out of the blue and you're not ready, the first move is don't speak. When somebody's lashing at you, this is perfect. Let them. Sit there and listen and just go, whoa, on the inside. Like, holy smokes. Let them go at you. Be overwhelmed on the inside, especially on the phone. In fact, on the phone, when you're listening and they can't see you, you can even go, what in the world? Let it happen. Let them come at you. Think, be calm. Then, sometimes, if you have time, because most people, if you don't respond, most angry people become more angry when you respond. Without your responding, most people run out of gas in 60 seconds or so, especially if they don't know you, if there's nothing personal involved. So just wait till he's done. Just sit there on the phone. Get a bottle of water. Wait. Then you say, in as calm a voice as possible, because if you use any getting and protecting behavior, in other words, if you attack him, he'll attack more. If you act like a victim, as in, oh, I'm sorry, don't apologize. There's a huge difference between admitting you're wrong and apologizing. If you go, oh, I'm sorry, now he's going to be put in a position of, oh, okay, so you may, and come right down your throat even more. You wait till he's done, and then you simply explain what you did. We did what we thought you wanted to do, and we weren't authorized to make an expenditure that the client didn't authorize. We've never done this before. For any other client, you explain that. We've never done this before. Then it's very helpful in the case of a victim to put the ball back in their court or in their hand. How would you like us to handle this? Not, what would you like us to have done different? What would you like us to do? Not the past. What would you like us to do? Well, I lived it. So, how would you like us to carry this forward? Not interested in being beaten up, blah, blah, blah. And then if they keep yelling, blah, 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 so you would like us to what? Because I'm not interested in their yelling. You just don't respond to that. So you would like me to 1, 2, 3. Is that right? You'd like me to this, this, and this. Yes, great. Then if that's excessive, you say, so I'm willing to do 1 and 2. Then you tell them what you're willing to do. And you get to a solution. You simply ignore the getting and protecting part. You ignore the victimhood. You ignore the yelling. You ignore the lies. You ignore the attacking. Ignore it. You ignore the fact that he's being a great big baby, picture it if you'd like, sitting in his high chair, throwing his baby food all over the room. That can be a very useful mental image if you'd like. But what are we going to do? And get to a solution. But you don't have to defend yourself. There's really just no need. What's next? And then it's over. I talked to Bill earlier today, and his older sister and brother, what they did was they made plans to place his mother. By the way, we don't have very many pre-planned questions, so gosh, you guys just roll them on in. In fact, I don't have any more, so I got some comments from the weekend, but ask your questions. They had made plans to put his mother, who is, I may miss it by a year or two, but 92 or 4 between those 2 years, made plans to put his mother in assisted care. And his sister essentially did this. Okay, well, we're putting her here, and we're putting you down for a third. So your part is this. So imagine somebody pretty much doing this for you, buying a car for you, and agreeing that you would make payments for it, which is what they did for him. They said, oh sure, Bill would be happy to make payments of X dollars a month. In other words, he would pay for a third of her assisted living. And his reaction was, I don't have that much money. And he just calmly explained, nice of you to make the arrangements, but I don't have that much money. And his sister went on to attack him and say that he had poorly handled his money all of his life. And, he admits he hasn't done as well with his money as his sister and his brother have done. They're a small family. There's only his sister, his brother, him, and their mother. There are no cousins. There is no anybody else. That's it. The 4 of them. And they just really can't tolerate him. His only brother in all the world, there's only the 4 of them, and one of them's married. His brother, Bill's gay, and his brother won't even allow him into their home because he's gay. So it's not a tight family. Small but not tight. So they are willing to submit him a bill for their mother's care, but he won't let him in his house. And, Bill's learned to accept that and to see that you go get love from the people who have the capability of loving you instead of demanding love from the people who don't have it. Well, welcome to life, huh? We can spend all of our lives whining about not getting love from the people who ought to give it to us, but there you are. We just finished a 2-day immersion in Atlanta, and I just made a note of several things that I noticed, which I've noticed over and over, but which repeat themselves wherever I go. So, you know, here we were surrounded by a room full of people, and wherever I go, I see the same things. Everywhere we go, even though people appear to be adult human beings who function well in their jobs and their businesses and their families, they look all put together. Everywhere we go, people are in a great deal of pain. Everywhere. No matter what culture they are, no matter what religion, no matter what sex, no matter what their sexual orientation, no matter what their age is, no matter what their marital status is, people are in a great deal of pain. And they believe that their crimes are worse than everyone else's. And it turns out that they're not. We all do pretty much the same stuff. It goes by different names and different flavors, but we're all just escaping from our pain. And that's what our crimes are. Our horrific, unforgivable sins are really just our way of escaping from our pain. And it's fun to watch people realize that, how closely related to each other we really are. That we're bound together by our pain, that we're bound together by the same wounds, and we really are brothers and sisters. And that regardless of our sins, and I say sins as in our crimes, the way we escape from our pain, the way out is the same. We just have to feel loved and feel loved by each other. And if we persist in getting that love, we will heal. It was a hoot watching people who thought they had just unforgivable sins or crimes in their lives, watching them feel loved and happy right on the spot in the seminar. People who just felt horrible, and watching them feel happy right then. Not, well, gee, we hope you feel happy in 20 years, but watching them feel happy within seconds. And then, longitudinally speaking, over long periods of time, watching people who have come to multiple seminars and watching people who have participated in hundreds of teleconference calls and watching people who have participated in telling the truth about themselves and feeling loved, who have had then hundreds of those moments of feeling loved in the moment, watching them now establish patterns of feeling loved, so that now they know what it means to feel genuinely happy over long periods of time. So it really works for long periods of time. That's a hoot. It really works, is what I'm saying. And it works over and over again. And again, it works no matter who you are. You just have to keep doing it. Susan S. is reporting in that she made it home safely, but not peacefully, which was not a terrible surprise to those of us who were there. So I'm guessing you had a few comments about the conditions of the road and the drivers on it between here and the state which shall remain unnamed, Ohio. Oh. Let's see, here's a question that says, what would be the best thing to do when one child makes a mistake and is having a consequence, and the younger child starts crying and carrying on about his brother having a consequence? Now we have two crying mad children being victims. Why would the younger child start crying and carrying on about the brother having a consequence? You're going to have to explain that. Most children rejoice that the brother gets a consequence. You're going to have to explain that. In other words, most of the time when Most of the time, when an older brother gets a consequence, the other kids giggle about it. So why would the younger child cry and carry on about a brother having a consequence? You're going to have to explain that to me. I don't get it. Most kids don't care a bit when a kid gets a consequence. They're like happy about it, which is not necessarily a loving thing, but nonetheless, they're happy about it. So here's a couple writing in. Let's see. This is going to be hard.
3-year-old Allie.
Oh, okay. So a mother writes that my 3-year-old child, is this right? Oh, here we are. It comes in 2 parts. I have a question about our 3-year-old Allie. She does 2 things I don't know how to handle. One is that she whines and wails about almost anything. We don't change our minds or move any faster, as in it has no effect when she does this. I've tried doing consequences. If you wail, you'll be locked in your room or left alone in the car until you've finished. But she just continues to complain and whine, except quieter. She's too young to understand the complexities of your being a victim, so what you receive you can't enjoy. Oh, I see. Oh, well, this is easy. See, she whines and wails. We don't change our minds or move any faster. Oh, well, you're responding to her whining. With our kids, if a child whines, we don't respond at all. So, for example, if a child would say to us, I'm assuming, like, for example, she would say, well, I want some raisins. And so what you're saying is you don't move any faster when you get the raisins. Well, in our house, if a child says, I want some raisins, we would say, I don't understand you. Because that I want some raisins in that tone of voice isn't English. It's not. So I don't understand what you're saying. And if a child doesn't understand what we mean, and every kid does, at 3, the child does understand. So what we would do is we would illustrate what we mean by that. But you only have to show it to them one time. At 3 years old, she's not stupid. And so you show her. You say, so you illustrate by whining, I want some raisins. I don't understand that. But you say, I want some raisins. That's English. And you say, I want some raisins. And you say, I know what that means. And then you go get some raisins. But then you put them back. You say, I don't know what that means. And then you say, so when you can talk to me and tell me what you want, then let me know and I'll be back. And when you say that, the kid will speak in English in no time, because otherwise they starve to death. I've done this with mothers before. I've had little children who spoke only in whine. That's a language, by the way. English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Afghan, and whine. And I've had mothers who say they only whine, and had them come over and visit. And the child has said to me, pointing to something up on the counter, and I've just said, huh? What? I don't understand. And then the child falls on the floor and screams and kicks and actually spins like a top on the floor, screaming. And I'll even get down on the floor while the child is spinning like a top, which I guess if you go fast enough would actually become sort of stabilizing like a gyroscope. I've never seen one go fast enough to do that. But so if they, while they're spinning, actually got down on the floor and said, no, I still can't understand you. I've even then gotten up with the mother and gone to another room and said, so let us know when you can speak so we can understand you. And you can do that from the time they're, 2, because they do understand what you're saying. They do. And then after you've left, and then they follow you to the other room and fall on the floor screaming and spin like a top, And they get you back. After, 3 or 4 of those, the kid will come to you. They always have. And they come up to you. Of course, now you have mucus running down their face, and it's disgusting. But then the kid will go, I want a banana. Oh, okay. And then you give them a banana. No problem. What you did was just retrain them to speak in English as opposed to speak in whine. It's easy. You just don't recognize whine, ever. You don't even hear it. It is as the buzzing of flies to you. Let's see. Linda said, how would you advise Bill to handle the situation with his mom and his sister and his brother? Exactly like he did. He told them. Bill handled it beautifully. He didn't need a word of suggestions. He told them. Well, actually, I gave him a word or two, but he'd already done it. He said, I wish I had more money to offer you. I don't have any more money. I suggested that he commend them. Thank you so much for being willing to handle mom and put her in a home and to go to all the trouble, to take care of her. Wow, really appreciate that. Wish I'd handled my finances in my life as well as you have. You don't say anything defensive. You don't say, wish you had checked with me before you did this. You don't say, it was really rude of you to send me a bill, because they're just going to get defensive. You don't say, can't believe that you would do this without checking with me, and it really is rude. I mean, all those things are true, but why get into that? You just say, gosh, wish I had more to offer, but I don't. So sure appreciate what you're doing. And then if they say, well, but what are we going to do about your third? And you say, I don't know. I don't know. And so then when they say, well, what do you do? Expect us to pay for it? And this is important. You repeat yourself. I don't know. All I know is that I don't have the money to give you any more than I'm giving you. Do you see how with victims, you always give it back to them? You keep telling people what you have to give. I don't have any more to give. When they say, well, what do you expect? I don't. I don't expect. Well, do you expect us to pay for it? I don't know. Remember, they're the ones that gave him this problem. I don't know. Do you see how you're not jumping on the field of death with them? What a treat not to do that. No anger, no defending, no fighting. Bill is not going to participate with them on the field of death at all. And when I talked to Bill earlier today, let me tell you, he was like so Mr. No anguish about this. There was no questions in his mind. There was no like, what do I do? Nothing. He was Mr. Calm. And when you're calm, these answers just occur to you. You don't get excited about it. Oh, he was a treat talking to. Laura is, Jerusha was complimenting me on doing an imitation of a 3-year-old. Well, I raised several. This is Laura. You only have to raise one to be able to do an impression of a 3-year-old. After 5, you can do it asleep. This is Laura, and I'm talking about my voice. The 6-year-old is getting a consequence by having to go outside to be with the animals because of the choices he made. Good for you. My 5-year-old started hitting me and crying because I put his brother outside. The 6-year-old was okay after I spoke to him, and he had his consequences. The 5-year-old continued to cry and kick the door and walls because I put his brother outside for the consequence. Oh, okay. Well, if the 5-year-old wants to cry and kick the doors and walls, and he's not, if he wants to kick the doors and walls of his room and he's not damaging anything, For example, let's say that he's kicking a concrete wall and he's not damaging anything. Then I would say, let him kick the concrete wall. If he's kicking a wall and leaving scuffs, then I would just briefly do what I've done with many children, and that is say, I would just put my hand up briefly. Let's say his name is Kyle, and say, Kyle, just with this much excitement, Kyle, let me just point out something to you. If you continue to kick the wall and you leave scuffs, you'll have to wash the wall. So I don't care if you kick the wall. You're welcome to kick the wall. You're welcome to cry all night, because crying doesn't affect me. So cry away, because I'm going into the next room. You need to go into the next room then, so that he can see that his crying has no effect on you. That's why he's crying, so it will bother you. If you kick the wall, however, and leave scuffs, you will have to wash the wall. If you kick a hole in the wall, that will be your allowance for, pretty much the rest of the year for a 5-year-old. So if it was me, I wouldn't. It's all about the consequences. So you deal with the consequences in the moment. Do you follow? And the other thing I would just check to be sure is to be sure that the 5-year-old isn't afraid. So if the 5-year-old is afraid that his 6-year-old brother is not all right, if it's nighttime, shine the flash-year-old and the 6-year-old and say, he's okay. He's fine out there, outside. Nobody's going to die out in the backyard. Let the 5-year-old out and spend time with his 6-year-old brother out in the backyard. But see, if you're not frightened and you're not angry, it's very unlikely that the 5-year-old will be frightened. Really. If he's just mad because you did something he doesn't like, well, then let him kick the wall. I'm telling you, if parents do consequences and they're not afraid and angry, the other kids in the room tend not to be. So just be sure he's not frightened and angry, and point out to him the consequences of his own behavior. Go ahead and kick the wall, but you cause damage, you're going to have to fix it. See, in the beginning, kids tend not to believe you. So you just have to let them experience a few consequences and then let them fix it. I broke up with my boyfriend last night. And although I did it from the perspective of his not being able to work on the relationship and perceived red flags, now I realize it is also because I wasn't able to love him unconditionally, and I'm feeling bad about myself. If only I could have done better, the relationship would have survived. I'm sure the quality of the relationship wouldn't have been what I wanted. Oh, honey, this one's not hard. If you are in a relationship where you're not married, where you don't have a long-term committed relationship, you're with a boyfriend, and you realize that you don't know how to be unconditionally loving in a relationship, you got nothing to lose. Dump them. It sounds almost cavalier. Well, forgive me. What have you got to lose? By getting rid of the pack on your back, learning how to be unconditionally loving, you can always come back to it later, or come back to another one. Whether it's his fault, your fault, what do you care? If you're not in a long-term relationship like a marriage, get rid of the burden. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. Learn what love is from the beginning, and then worry about a relationship all over again. He'll be fine. Start over. So don't fuss about that. It isn't even worth thinking about. Somebody said, would you explain what you meant when you said, if they had understood the law of choice, they could have avoided the concentration camps? What did I mean by that? They could have avoided the concentration camps. I don't know, honey. I think there was probably more to my quote than that. So you're going to have to give me more of it. Sorry. If I think I know what you're talking about. When I think what you mean is when we understand the law of choice, we understand we avoid the bitterness surrounding most of the feelings around concentration camps. You know, people, when people talk about concentration camps, there's all of this bitterness around it. You know, people talking about what horrible things they are. When we understand the law of choice, we understand that people do the things that they do only because because growth in the process of learning to love requires mistakes. The law of choice requires that we learn by screwing up. The concentration camps were a product of the law of choice, of people being required to make mistakes. And we wouldn't become so furiously angry at what we regard as monsters when they were really just human beings like us, like me, put in extraordinary circumstances. And we wouldn't get all this self-righteous anger at those people. But no, under the law of choice wouldn't have avoided, understanding the law of choice wouldn't have avoided the concentration camps. I think it's a bit of a misquote. All right, I've had the experience of making some real love calls to be seen, and then at a later date, having these people check back in with me, wanting to know what I've done in the circumstance. While I get that they're concerned about me, I also feel irritated with them because I feel that I'm being judged, especially if the outcome is not what they thought needed to happen. I also get that next time I might just not make the calls to them specifically, but now feel restricted from talking in our group as the last time I did. I received a judgmental noise from one of these people, and I could see the judgment on her face. I need to be seen, and I'm there to learn to love others, and this doesn't feel good to me. Okay, so good point. A good thing to teach everybody else. But let me make a comment to you. And so comment to everybody. What changes us is, and what helps us most is when we tell the truth about ourselves and the people around us simply accept us and love us and support us. Where we make the mistakes in our lives is when we don't feel loved and we act out in getting and protecting behaviors, lying, attacking, acting like victims, clinging, running. Those are the mistakes of life. The mistakes in life don't stem from those. Those are the mistakes. So what we need is not to be told, now, you shouldn't have been angry. That's like when a child spills milk across the table, the parent who says, "How many times have I told you not to spill milk?" What a stupid thing to say. The child gets that. There isn't a child who's thinking, "Oh, yeah, I forgot that. Milk would be better in the glass as opposed to all over the table." What do we think? Our children are what, retards? No, they got that. And yet we think we have to repeat it. We're the dummies that we keep repeating that. What people need is to be loved while they're making their mistakes. Then, once they feel sufficiently loved, and sometimes, as you saw on this past weekend, for example, sometimes, occasionally, we might point out a choice they don't see. Some people are so confused and blind, like even during these video chats, I'll go, have you considered, like with the child, I'll say, well, have you considered this consequence? Or like with the 3-year-old, instead of responding to the language whine, have you considered this? Sometimes you point out to people an alternate choice. Occasionally. Mostly, it's love them. As people feel loved, they don't feel the need to respond with the stupid behaviors anymore, the wrong ones. And suddenly, it's like your brain opens up, clears up, and you go, whoa, I can see the world clearly for the first time. I don't need to do that dumb thing anymore. I can respond that way. I never saw that way before. Most people have no clue who they even really are in life because they've been so busy defending themselves. If all you've ever known is defending yourself from an onslaught of knives and swords and arrows, that's all you've ever known, you don't even know what the world is like when these swords and knives and arrows stop. We love people to the point where many people wake up for the first time and realize, this is life? You're kidding. I didn't know. I didn't even know what peace was. They start making conscious decisions for the first time. So, we're there to love them and help them so they can start making conscious, loving decisions. We don't then need to call them up and say, so did you do what I recommended? Now, if we do that, it's like we had an agenda. Now, it's okay to call somebody up and say, so how are you feeling? Are you feeling happier? Are you doing better? That's a good and loving thing. But if we call them up to check on them and we're disappointed that they didn't do what we wanted, oh man, that's just crushing. There have been a few times, very few ever, that I've called up to check on somebody to see how a conversation went, to love and support them. A woman calls me and she says, I'm going to have this really difficult conversation with my husband, and afterward, I'll call and go, so how did it go? Do you need any support around how it went? But I don't care how she conducted the conversation. So let's say in the conversation she was a total wuss. She didn't say half the things that she really meant to say. I don't care. What if she says, I acted like a victim for the 1,000th time instead of doing the things that we talked about? I don't care. What did you learn from it? If she learns something that she can use in the next time, hallelujah. We don't need to, but the person who wrote this, you need to learn from this. Just because somebody was judgmental and critical of you in the group, we have to not continue to protect ourselves. If you protect yourself just because somebody is judgmental, you shut yourself off from the other people in the group loving you. So, just because that person made it, I think you called it, a judgmental noise, that's them. That's not the whole group. We're going to run into judgmental, critical, unloving people everywhere we go. Okay, so that's one. One person that couldn't love us. So what? I'm going to keep telling the truth about myself. That's what I'm going to do. Because that exposes me to the people who can love me. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to find love. How about you? I'm not going to close myself off just because there's an occasional unloving person here and there. Nope. I'm not going to live that way. So that's just my recommendation to you. Question. My 21-year-old stepson is really struggling. He isn't feeling like anyone cares about him because we're not enabling him and paying for his bills. Yeah. When people are being irresponsible, they often define love as saving them, rescuing them, babying them, diapering them, feeding them, paying their bills. He can't hold a job, well, or maybe we should say isn't holding a job. Does a place to live, uses being a victim as a way to receive conditional love. As we have helped him in the past, he can't see it or feel loved by it, and has absolutely, yes, and that's an important thing to point out. Because he's such a victim and a whiner and a complainer, and because he demands being helped, then even when his parents step in and say, because he says, give me money, I gotta have money, you gotta help me. And then when they give him money, does he feel loved by it? No, he feels paid. So in his world, it works like this. If he doesn't get what he wants, he's screwed. And if he does get what he wants, it's just even. What a life a victim leads. So he can't see it or feel loved, and he has absolutely zero desire to do anything to change the situation. How can we help him and love him? I suggest you read the parenting book. Really. It's never too late to read the parenting book. A, you learn how he got where he is. B, the principles that apply to all the little kids still apply to him. And then C, there's a whole section in there about raising adult children. So this kid needs to hear tons from you about how you love and support him. You need to talk to him like an adult instead of like a baby. So how are you doing? Oh, my life is miserable. Oh, so you ignore that. So what did you do today? Instead of feeling like held hostage by this kid, instead of hearing all the woe is me, you listen to him and ask him what's going on today. So what'd you do today? All I did was eat garbage out of garbage cans. So I've done this with people. I'm not making this up. So what did you find in the dumpster? An adult, if an adult said, well, we went to the Olive Garden, you say, so what did you eat? Well, if a kid complains with the intent of getting attention, says, all I had was I went to the dumpster. So what did you have? Well, all I found was some old rotten bananas. So how was it? Just like you'd say, how was the cuisine? You ask him how his day was. How did things go? And you love him and you support him. And at the end of the conversation, you say, I have complete faith in you that you're going to do just fine, just like you would with any other kid. You teach him just like you would any other kid. You describe the mistakes you've made. You say, man, I've been learning some stuff. We've really screwed up and made some mistakes in your life. You needed unconditional love and support from us, and we didn't give it to you. But despite the mistakes that we made in your life, you're going to read all this in the Real Love and Parenting book. Despite the mistakes that we made in your life, we have complete faith in you. We do. Now, from time to time, you might say things like, how can we help you? Maybe we could, help you. Could we drive you around to some job interviews? What are some ways we could help you? And as he says, well, you could give me some money. You say, well, it's been our experience that hasn't been helpful, but we'd be willing to, and you name some things you would be willing to do. Just because he demands a thing doesn't obligate you to give it to him. But you're telling him some stuff you would be willing to do. We'd be willing to do this and this. If the kid is willing to start over, you say, well, we'd be willing to put a deposit down on an apartment for a month to help him get started. You'd be willing to get him going, but you're not willing to pay his way. Describe what you are willing to do, but you keep it limited. You keep your support partial and temporary. That's the kind of help that kickstarts a kid's career, as opposed to complete and long-term, which all that does is cripples a kid. And you're constantly upbeat and supportive and loving. That's the kind of thing that a parent does to really help a kid. So, we had a just utterly delightful immersion. It was delightful to see so many of you, and really thrilling to see so many of you on the chat here tonight. So, if you would, send me a whole bunch of questions for a week from today. I think I missed one of your questions here tonight, only because it came in with just a few seconds here to go. I will save that for next time. And we look forward to seeing you a week from today. We love you tons. We'll see you next week.